Well, hello, my name is Topher Field. You're watching another Slow Chat. Tonight's guest is none other than David Limbrick. And judging by the fact that 170 of you have already poured in just the first 1 minute, as you've all got the notification, you're all diving in, indicates to me that there's going to be quite a lot of interest. We're going to have a lot of people watching tonight. And of course, there's a lot of interest. This is a particularly thorny, technical, detailed, but also important topic. Group voting tickets in Victoria matter because they're kind of mandatory. If someone votes above the line, their vote goes according to the group voting ticket. But I am mindful that there's three different categories of people watching right now. There's people that know what group voting tickets are. You've seen them come out. You've had a look at a whole bunch of different parties' group voting tickets, and now you want to get my take, David's take. You want to hear me ask David the thorny questions about the Liberal Democratic Party's group voting tickets, all that stuff. That's one category. There's another category. You know what group voting tickets are, but you haven't looked at any of them for this election, and that's fair. We're all busy. We've all got lives. And then the third group is sitting there going, I'm sorry, I thought I was tuning in for a slow chat. What's a group voting ticket? And we have to obviously make room for all groups. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a very quick explanation. For those of you that have seen my marbles preferential voting videos, you'll cotton onto this very, very easily. For those that haven't, you might have to visualize it a little bit. But the way voting works in Australia is we have what's called a preferential voting system. What that means is that you vote for the party that you like the most, but if they get eliminated, let's say they only get 2% of the vote and they get knocked out really early on, rather than your vote simply not counting anymore, you can pick your second preference. And what happens is all those votes that got knocked out move towards the next least bad candidate. So each of us, we only get one vote, but we can sort of hand that vote along our list of candidates in the order that we think they're least bad until finally it'll sort of stick with one that makes it and gets elected, or that is sort of comes second in the election. It'll be one or the other. That's called a preferential voting system. There's good reasons why we do it. I actually really like it. There's a lot of people that don't understand it, that knock it and think, oh, yeah, you're letting people vote more than one time, or various nonsense like that. I actually think the system as designed is really, really good. We just don't understand it very well because it's not taught in our schools. And secondly, different states do it differently. And I'm of the opinion that Victoria does it pretty badly. I like the federal system as it exists now, where your vote only goes where you send it. You're the one that has to write the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 in the order on the candidates that you want. In Victoria, we have a thing called a group voting ticket. That means if you vote above the line, that means if you're just putting one number beside a party, you put a 1 next to the party you choose, and the party chooses where your vote goes. I'm not a fan of that. But I have to accept the fact that that's the system as it exists right now. We have to live with that. We have to address that. We have to work with that. And so that list of where a party will send your vote, if you put a 1 next to their name, that's called a group voting ticket. That's the big news right now, because they were all made public. They've all been negotiated between the parties. It's all been secret. They just got published the other day. So we've all had a chance to now dive in and go through the group voting tickets. And I've got to be honest with you. There's a lot in there, number one. There's a lot to digest. Number two, I wasn't especially happy. But I've asked David Limbrick specifically to come on. Full disclosure, I'm a financial member of the Liberal Democratic Party, right? So I do kind of have a dog in this fight, but at the same time, they don't pay me to do this. And all of my opinions expressed on tonight's show are entirely my own. And I am not going to be afraid to speak my mind. And I'm not entirely happy with what I've seen, if I'm quite honest, with the Liberal Democratic Party's group voting ticket. But also there's a lot to talk about with other parties' group voting tickets as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring in my special guest tonight, David Limbrick. Keep in mind, he has been on the hustings with early voting for a couple of days now. The poor bloke is very, very tired. I won't use the colloquial term. I'll probably get banned off YouTube, but he's very, very tired. So I'm going to grill him. We've got some people saying here, yes, grill him regarding preferences, Lib Dem. Yeah, okay, we're going to have that. We're going to have a robust chat about that. Keep in mind the bloke's exhausted. So we're going to have a chat about that. And, other people are saying, the Lib Dems are going way down on my ticket after watching Monica's latest post. Well, listen, I'm glad you're here. Hold fire on that, because I had a really bad first impression. I did not like what I saw when I opened up and had a look at the Liberal Democratic Party's group voting tickets when I first looked at them. But the longer I looked, the better I liked it. And there is a case to be made. If you look at my most recent Facebook post, there is a case to be made that the Liberal Democratic Party have actually acted with an enormous amount of principle, and a lot of what they've done makes a lot of sense. Perfect? No. Very good? I'm actually willing to say yes, but I'll get to that later on. But first, let's invite on David Limbrick. Thank you so much. You're tired. You've been spending so much time on the polling booths, and yet you've given me about a half an hour of your time tonight to have a chat and to let me give you a hard time. So firstly, thank you very much.
Thanks for inviting me. I always love talking with you, Topher. Yeah. So there was no pre-poll on Sunday, but okay. Yes, it's been a busy day today. First day of pre-poll. It was pretty exciting, actually. Didn't see too much drama down at pre-poll. I was at Mulgrave and Dandenong. So, okay. Yeah, it was pretty good.
So Ethan Clark is cracking open the big topics here. David, off topic. It's not off topic, Ethan. Formula One is never off topic. The next Australian Formula One driver, Oscar Piastri, is from your electorate in Brighton. There you go. I actually didn't know that.
Brighton's not in my electorate.
Oh, there you go. Okay. So I didn't actually know that he's from Brighton. I knew he was an Aussie. I didn't know he was a Melbourne boy. But can we have a frank discussion here? Because you as a candidate, you don't actually negotiate the group voting ticket preferences. You don't actually have a hand in that. That's done by the party, and people complain about that. Oh, it's the party machine, etc. Well, it kind of has to be that way. Part of the reality is that they're trading off preferences in one seat to try and get a better deal in another seat and various other things like that. Have you had a chance to actually have a look at the group voting tickets? And what were your first impressions when you saw them?
Look, I haven't. I've looked at them briefly, but as you alluded to, you've got 8 regions with 21 parties for 8 regions, so 21 times 8 or whatever number it is running in each region. So there's a lot of stuff to look at. And frankly, I've been focused on campaigning rather than looking at stuff that's already happened and can't be controlled anymore. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Look, I'll be honest. When I first looked at it, I had more questions than answers, and I've seen a number of Facebook posts go out from people that I do respect and I continue to respect. But I get the sense that their Facebook posts were probably based on their first impressions. They probably looked at it and went, whoa. And that was the basis of the Facebook post. I took the time. I've been in this game long enough to know politics is it's an awful game. I hate it. I actually don't enjoy commentating on it at all. And I hated being in it when I was a candidate in the federal election, and I don't envy your position, David. But one of the things that I've learned is that the devil is in the detail, but also the beauty is in the detail. So I spent some time really digging in. But I'll get to that later. What I want to do with you, David, is challenge you with a few of the questions that people have asked me. I'll be honest, I had phone calls today from multiple different people who volunteer for the Liberal Democratic Party who were pretty much ready to throw in the towel, again, on the basis of that first impression. Who were ready to just turn around and go, no, it's not worth it. I've given up so much for this party. I've spent so much time. I've done all these things. And this is how they've gone and done their preferences, and had to sort of talk them through that. And I know that some of them are probably going to end up watching this either live or as a replay later on. So I'm going to put to you some of the questions that they have for me. The Liberal Democrats, more so than, let's say, someone like a UAP or One Nation, other parties like that, the Democratic Labor Party, Family First, the Liberal Democrats have more of a mixed bag of these minor parties further up in their preferences, including some that raise some pretty big red flags for me and others. Animal Justice Party, Transport Matters, Andy Medic. These are not our favorite people, given all that's gone on in the last 2 weeks.
Andy Medic's not up there.
He's not? Okay. Sorry. I've pulled the wrong name off the top of my head.
Yep.
But these aren't necessarily people who are on our favorite person list after the last couple of years. And given where they stand on a lot of political issues, and I can very much understand why a lot of people would be looking at it going, what the hell is going on? So can you give us a big picture look? What is the party? I know you didn't negotiate them, but what is the party trying to achieve with a group voting ticket? And how did we end up with some of these really questionable parties sitting in the top half, let's be honest, in that top half of the Liberal Democratic Party's group voting tickets? How does that happen? How do we justify that?
Sure. All right. So the first thing to note, which you spoke about earlier, is preferences only matter if the candidate doesn't get elected. if you're planning on winning an area and you think that you've got a good chance of winning that area, then the preferences that you allocate will never get distributed. So that's the first point, and I think you made that point earlier. But secondly, if parties simply, tried to come up with a list of, which parties they think may be aligned to them and then put them in order like that, that's pretty much what the socialists have done forever, and they've never gotten elected. Now, we didn't design this system. I'm with you. Look, is it a good system? Probably not. But we have to work within the system. Our job is to get people elected, and we have to work within that system. Now, if we're in a situation where there is a party that we think, or if there's an area that we think we're gonna win in, then if we allocate a preference high up in that area, it'll never amount to anything. And if we can get some benefit from that, then that should totally be a thing, right? Similarly, if there's a party which we think has no chance of getting elected, again, we've got the same situation. We've got a zero cost action which provides some benefit. So strategically, this is a smart thing to do, I think. Now, I realize that there's people that think that it means that you like this party more than another party. That's not what it means at all. The main game here for us is ensuring that to the greatest extent, Labor and the Greens are reduced in Parliament. And if you look at our group voting tickets, you will see that in every region, in upper and lower houses, we've put the Liberals ahead of the Labor Party. Now, I've got lots of problems with the Liberal Party. I think we've spoken about this before. I have many problems. They voted to kick us out of Parliament. The Liberal Party voted to kick Tim and I out of Parliament for refusing to hand over our vaccines.
And Catherine Cummings. I'm going to stand up for Catherine Cummings. She was right there with you.
And Neil Angus as well, one of their own crew. So I am still very, very upset with the Liberal Party about what they did here. Nevertheless, despite that, we have put them above the Labor Party everywhere because we think it's so important. Now, secondly, with the Greens, right now, one of the problems here with the group voting ticket system is if minor parties do not coordinate or they disrupt coordination, which some of these other parties have been trying to do, the end result won't necessarily be any of them getting elected. What it will be Greens getting elected. Now, I don't know about you. I loathe the idea of more Greens coming into Parliament. I think that there will be more Greens coming into Parliament despite our best efforts. One of the things that people seem to forget is in the last term of Parliament, there was 5 Greens in the upper house and no Liberal Democrats, no Libertarians, nothing like that. Through these negotiations in the last term of Parliament, there is now only 1 Green in the upper house of Parliament and there's 2 Libertarians. So, if you're going to judge things on their outcomes, I think that the outcomes here have been excellent because if there hadn't been that coordination in the last term of Parliament, this Parliament, you would have had 5 or 6 Greens on the crossbench. There would have been no voice for freedom there. And we would have been in a dire situation in the last 2 years. It would have been much easier for the government to do whatever they wanted. So I think this is the important thing here. And I think another thing that people need to understand is that we need to judge, when parties are looking at us, you shouldn't judge parties based on, these preference negotiations. You judge them on their record in Parliament and what they say and whether they stick to what they said they're going to do. We've done that. Like no one, I totally stand by our record in Parliament since we got elected. So, this idea that, some parties that people might not like are higher than others or whatever, it does not mean that you like this party more than the other. It means that the people in charge of doing these negotiations have made a calculation, and I have total trust in the people on our side that are doing these sort of things, that they're acting in the best interests of the defense of liberty, right? They want to get people into Parliament that are there to defend liberty. And if they think that they can, do something in a way that is not going to cost us anything, although it's costing us, people being upset about it, I suppose is the cost. But I don't think it's costing us anything in real terms, in terms of outcomes. I think it's beneficial.
Yeah, look, there's a lot in there. I want to reiterate 1 or 2 points because I'm just mindful that there are people watching tonight who aren't necessarily as in this game as you and I You more so than me. But number one, prior to the last Victorian election, we had 5 Greens on the crossbench. They held the balance of power. Now, can you imagine all of the wrangling over legislation that's happened in the last couple of years, all of the extensions of the pandemic declarations and emergency powers and so forth? If Labor and Greens combined had had a majority in the upper house, there would have never have been any wrangling. It all just would have been rubber stamped and passed and gone straight through with no questions asked. So that's a really important point. And people criticize Glenn Drury. And like I've said, I would rather the system that enables a Glenn Drury, I would rather that didn't exist. I'm speaking personally here. I would rather that we didn't have group voting tickets. That is my personal preference. But we do have them. And what Glenn does is legal. Is it moral? Well, each of you can make your own decision around that, but it is most certainly legal. And as a result of what he did at the last election, we saw 4 less Greens and 2 Libertarians for the first time in the history of our parliament. I think the significance of that cannot be overstated. And there are people who have very simplistically taken their opposition to the current system and turned that into opposition to parties that have used the current system. And I think that those ought to be 2 very, very different things. Your voting record, I think, speaks for itself. I think that's a great point. But I want to slow down again on a point because I didn't actually make it during the live chat. I made this point just before we went live, David, and that was parties that are eliminated before you cannot benefit from your preferences. And this is a really important point to slow down on. So when you look, okay, Liberal Democrats, if I vote number 1 Liberal Democrats, where are those preferences going to go? There is this mental assumption that your preferences are going to work their way through every single one of those parties one by one. But the reality is the Liberal Democrats were the 11th most voted for party in the most recent federal election. Now, how many parties are there running in the upper house? It's like 30 or some parties. That's a huge number of parties. An enormous number of parties are going to be eliminated before the Liberal Democrats, assuming the Liberal Democrats even are. And obviously, we're hoping that they're not. But an enormous number of those parties that you're looking at going, oh no, the Liberal Democratic preferences are going to go to X party. That party won't be there by the time the Liberal Democratic Party preferences are being distributed. I think that's a really critical point. Now, someone asked earlier, or someone said earlier, that the Liberal Democrats aren't running lower house candidates. Now, I know that that's not correct, but can you give us some details on what is happening?
Yeah, so with regards to lower house candidates, we've decided to not run candidates everywhere for a few reasons. One, we want to ensure that every candidate that we're running is very high quality, can defend the principles of libertarianism, the principles of liberalism, and that they're rock solid. So we're very fussy with our candidates. That's the first point. But secondly, even if we did have 88 lower house candidates that were all highly principled and excellent communicators and all this sort of stuff, we probably wouldn't still run them everywhere because we have limited resources. We need to focus those resources in a way that is the maximum strategic effect. And having lots and lots and lots of lower house candidates, our state executive decided that that wasn't a good use of our resources.
Yeah.
But in my region, we're running 4 lower house seats. We're running in Dandenong, Frankston, Narre Warren South and North. Again, we're preferencing the Liberals above Labor everywhere, despite my concerns. And they're wonderful candidates. They're absolutely fantastic candidates, and I would love to see any of them elected. Yeah, but we're not running everywhere. We simply don't have the people or resources to do that.
I think
we can do that.
Yeah, look, in future, I think it's a one step at a time thing. Different political parties adopt different strategies, and politics is one of those things where there is no right or wrong strategy. Some minor parties have made the decision, we're going to run a candidate everywhere in an effort to be a bigger party. The logic is that actually gets you a better return on investment for your advertising. If you're advertising and you're getting traction nationwide, you want to have candidates nationwide for people to vote for. And there's logic to that. I'm not saying that's the wrong move. The other way,
there's pros and cons here. There's correct. Different views on this. Some people say, it's better to run candidates everywhere because it'll help your upper house vote and it'll help your overall vote.
Yeah.
But you've also got the chance that some of those candidates might not be very good. You've got management issues, you've got resourcing issues. So look, I'm not saying there's a right or wrong here. We made the decision to do it this way. I'm not saying that doing it a different way is a bad thing. However you choose to do it.
And look, I tend to have a lot of sympathy actually for the more focused approach. having seen, thankfully, I've never been involved in running a campaign, and I never plan to, because I've seen the hell that those guys go through. And I think when you've got limited resources, focusing those is going to be a lot better. Got a question here from John. Whatever happened to Carolyn, Crystal, and John Heron? John Heron, I actually don't know. Crystal, I know, like myself, has stepped back and gone, you know what, I'm not going to run for anybody. It takes a lot out of you. It really does. It's a big sacrifice, and people like David really do pay a high price. Carolyn, I'm going to give a shout out. She's running as an independent. I don't recall the name of the seat, but I actually bumped into her. She was on Clarinda, is it? Thank you. And she was actually at a supermarket, at a shopping center, and I was going in there to get something from a chemist, and there she was, and we chatted and said hi, and we took a quick photograph. So if you're in the lower house seat of Clarinda, have a look for Carolyn White running as an independent in that seat. So, okay. One of the things that stood out to me as I went through everybody's group voting tickets is what's needed. And I've got track record here, so I can put my hand up and say, I have been saying for a very long time, including right through the federal election, that what's needed is for all of what I've dubbed the freedom-friendly minor parties. I mean, the UAP, One Nation, the Liberal Democratic Party. For the federal election, it was the Australian Federation Party, which aren't running in Victoria, IMOP, and a couple of others. The only way we were going to get people up was if we all preferenced each other before any of the major parties. And what it looks like has happened here in Victoria, based on the group voting tickets, it doesn't look like very many of those parties that I just mentioned that are running in the state, the Victorian state election, have actually done that. A lot of them have gone to the Liberal Party very, very early on in their ticket. Can you run? Actually, it's probably unfair because you haven't had a chance. You've been on the polling booth all day. But what do you think is going to be the consequence of that?
Yeah, so I roughly know what's been going on there. I've spoken to people in our team. So firstly, we have, like speaking for the Liberal Democrats, we have preferenced all of those parties above the majors, at least effectively, regardless of what they did.
Effectively is the key word. I'm going to cover that later. I know you've got to go soon, but I'm going to cover that later.
You know what? It's tricky, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, tricky, but in practice, that's true. I'll explain later. Please continue.
Yeah, so we have done that. And we wanted to reach agreements with all of those other parties and attempted to do so, but they refused. So, you'd have to ask them why they didn't want to do that. It's sort of, I feel pretty upset that, we've got parties espousing the values of freedom that would rather help a party that kicked people out of Parliament over vaccine mandates rather than help the people that got kicked out. But nonetheless, they can make their own decisions. We haven't done it to them. So, you read into that whatever you like. But we have done that. Like all along, we've said effectively we will preference nearly all minor parties first, then the majors, with Liberals before Labor, then the Greens, and sometimes Socialists and others. Yeah. But
they really
don't really matter that much. But the Greens matter. I'm worried about the Greens getting in. I think they will get more MPs. Yeah. I think South Metro is looking very likely. And there's other areas as well. Especially lower house seats. Again, this is another topic about preferences. With Northcote, Richmond, Albert Park. The Liberal Party in the lower house are preferencing the Greens above Labor. Now, we are running in, I don't think we're running in Richmond, but we're running in Northcote and Albert Park, and we won't be doing that. We will be putting Liberal, Labor and Greens at last because we don't want more Greens in Parliament as much as I loathe Labor. The only thing that's worse than Labor is a Labor Greens minority government coalition. Terrifies me. So we strongly disagree with what the Liberals are doing here. We think it's a very bad idea, and we will be doing what we can to stop it, which isn't much, but we will be trying.
Yeah. We've got a comment here from Ricky Lee Tyrrell, who is a friend of mine and someone I've got a lot of time for. She's a candidate for the One Nation Party in, I think, Northern Victoria, Upper House, I want to say, but I might have that wrong. Ricky, throw a comment in here for the seat that you're running in. Ricky says, you could have been a part of it, David, as in preference swapping between UAP and One Nation and others, had the LDP dropped Drury. There's probably things that David can't say there, but what I would say is be a part of what? The UAP have gone straight to the Liberal Party everywhere. They've just gone number 2 Liberal Party. There was no preference swapping between them and any other freedom-friendly parties. One Nation have been better, to their credit, Ricky. One Nation have been better in that regard, but nevertheless, a part of what? It's a my way or the highway. Drop Glen Drury and otherwise nothing, but there was nothing there. Like, this is my concern. There was no. It's not like the LDP missed the boat. There was no boat.
And the other thing here is, Topher, we're talking about parties as if they have a track record. Now, One Nation has a track record. UAP has a bit of a track record, but a lot of these parties have no track record at all. Like, we don't really know how they're going to act in Parliament or anything like that. Nevertheless, we still have put them above the majors. And this idea that, like, there's like these freedom parties. I know you've used this freedom-friendly minor parties, but I don't see a lot of freedom policies myself, frankly. There's many issues, like personal choice issues, they don't seem too keen on. So yeah.
Yeah, the word freedom, my wife wants me to do a video series on freedom. And actually, without referring to any philosophers, any books, anything, just start with the concept that, do you agree that we shouldn't kill each other for fun? All right, let's just start there. Can we agree we shouldn't kill each other just for personal gain or entertainment? We should have a reason. And if we don't have a reason, we shouldn't do that. Okay. From that one very simple, easy to agree concept, we can actually build an entire construct of what freedom is, human rights are, what the limits are, the boundaries, etc. And my wife's urging me to do that. And I'm like, really? It's so elementary. Like, does that really need to be done? But as I look at many of these parties that believe that they stand for freedom, I'm kind of like, oh, really? Maybe we do need to kind of have a freedom 101 and really just go through what that actually is and what that looks like.
With his own body and mind, the individual is sovereign.
100%.
John Stuart Mill. That's where it all starts. That's where it all starts.
Correct. But I don't even have to quote John Stuart Mill to get people to agree with that. We can we can start at a much less academic, not that John Stuart Mill is particularly academic, but we can start with almost nothing, and yet we can still build this entire amazing construct. All right, I want to come away from the group voting tickets. Just a couple more minutes of your time. You've had one day on the pre-polling. What's the mood been? Obviously, every day is going to be different. It all depends on the actual individuals that come past. But what's the mood been?
There was a lot of people. So I spent the day in Mulgrave and Dandenong. So I spent most of the morning in Mulgrave, the afternoon in Dandenong. Very different electorates, very different, makeup of the population in those two electorates.
Sure.
But, there was a lot of people that turned up. There was a lot of people that knew me, which was great. They come up. Some people wanted to do selfies and stuff, and some people knew us, and that was nice. In Mulgrave, there was a lot of interest in Ian Cook, which is fantastic.
Yep. Good.
A lot of people were coming up and saying hello and interested in the stand that he's taking. And as well, we're not running a candidate in Mulgrave. When we saw that Ian was running, we had a discussion about that, and we were like, well, if someone's going to throw in the spanner in the works for the government, it's going to be Ian. Why would we get involved in that? But I went down there and said g'day to Ian and had a chat with him, and he was in a good mood and very confident. So that's great. Look, there's a lot of people upset with Labor as well. I felt sorry for some of the Labor volunteers a bit. They copped it a lot from people. A lot of these people, they're just doing what they think is right.
Don't do that.
Yeah. Don't abuse people, because these people are just volunteers doing what they feel is right. Now, whether you agree with them or not is one thing, but you don't need to be nasty to people. And I always encourage everyone to be as civil as possible. It only makes you look bad when you do that. It makes you look awful. So be civilized to people. I was chatting to all sorts today. I was chatting to the Liberal guys, the Greens guys, the Labor guys. I was chatting to Ian and some of the other independents. It was very wholesome in Dandenong, actually. Everyone was getting along. There was no sort of, people getting in each other's faces and being stupid about it. They're all very civilized. And lots of people were taking my how to vote, and lots of people knew me. So that was a really good sign, considering it's my electorate. So that's great. Yeah.
No, look, it's fantastic. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think it's a tragedy that Victoria didn't send you to Canberra. at the federal election. But you know what? We've got the another opportunity to do the right thing this time around, and let's just hope that there is that critical mass there. Let's hope that that we do send yourself, Tim Quilty, at a minimum. But then I also know you've got some absolutely outstanding upper house candidates, many of whom are personal friends of mine or have become friends of mine over the journey. And just the caliber is really, really exceptional. So fingers crossed that we don't see the Greens retake the balance of power. But I just, with the group voting tickets that have come out today, I just look at it and I shake my head and I think these people, some of them, and I'll go through all of this in a minute, have unfortunately made it far more likely.
Yeah, and like you asked before, what's the outcome of that? You know, I think that a lot of these parties that you're talking about, they might not get themselves elected, but they might get a Green elected. You know,
Correct.
history might show that their actions will get a Green up, which really concerns me. But you know, we're doing everything we can to hold down Greens and Labor, but others maybe not.
Well, look, the fact is, if we can get enough people to actually give their first preference to the Liberal Democratic Party, then the preferences don't matter. That's the bottom line.
If you get elected, the preferences really don't matter. Yeah,
that's right. You know, we've just got to get enough first preference votes to you guys that you're the ones collecting other people's preferences and not the other way around. That's got to be the focus. Look, David Limbrick, I'll let you go and get some rest. Thank you for
as always, vote below the line. If you know,
yes,
the DVT is something that has to be done. You have to negotiate. You have to do it. You know, we didn't design the system, and if you don't like it, then just number it yourself. I mean, you know, that's what everyone has that option. I actually think that. Here's my prediction for you, Topher.
Sure.
I actually think that historically, the reason that we've had GVTs was to lower the overall informal vote, because numbering a great big ballot, which they used to force people to do, ended up in embarrassingly high numbers of informal votes. So to make it easy for the voters, they brought in this group voting ticket system. And I totally understand why, because you don't want 10% of the population being disenfranchised through informal votes. That's a horrible thing to happen, right? So I understand the rationale why they brought in GVTs. But here's the thing, right? With the increased engagement over the last couple of years, you've seen it, I've seen it, many people have seen it. So many more people are becoming educated through people like yourself, Topher, who are trying to educate people. So many more people are becoming engaged, educated, understanding these things. Here's my prediction that the below the line vote will be the highest ever because of that. People will say, I want to take control of my destiny. I want to do things the way that I choose. And I've been educated enough to do that. I think that that's what will happen.
Oh, look, and this is what we need. We just need a much more informed and engaged voting public. We've got where is it? DML saying, why not just make voting voluntary? Well, it's funnily enough, if you want to vote for a party that has that as their part of their
that's one of our policies.
Look, I'm with you. It should be voluntary. Preferential voting should be entirely voluntary. Voluntary, you should be able to number as many as you want or as few as you want and not have any rules or restrictions around that. However, if you want to change the system, you have to actually get in. And that means you have to engage with the system. Look, David, I'm not going to take any more of your time. You've got a long couple of weeks ahead. Thank you so much for giving me this much of your time, and have a great night.
Thanks a lot, Topher.
Cheers. Alrighty, that was David Limbrick. He is one of the upper house candidates for the Liberal Democratic Party. They're running some fantastic candidates. What we're going to do now is move into a time where I'm going to download to you some of what I've learned looking at the group voting tickets. Like many of you, when I first saw them, I had some red flags. Even now, again, full disclosure for those that weren't here at the start, I am a financial member of the Liberal Democratic Party. Okay, they don't pay me. There's no other relationship there. I paid them to become a member because they best represent my values. But I want to disclose that and make sure that everyone understands where I'm coming from. I'm very much in their corner. However, if you've been following me for very long at all, you will also know that I'm all about unity of the freedom-friendly parties. When I ran for the Senate in Tasmania, I was there with the wonderful candidate for One Nation, whose name has just escaped me, and the candidate for the UAP. Oh, goodness. I could remember their names just the other day. And we actually did joint press conferences, and we actually worked together, and we were trying to energize each other's volunteers. We had our volunteers handing out how to vote cards from multiple different parties. We were supporting each other because we recognized that we could rise together. And if we fragmented and we worked against each other, then none of us were going to go anywhere. So it just became really, really important that we actually sort of held the line and worked together. I've been on that message for a very long time. You know that. But what I've seen today was very disappointing. I will say I have been dismayed by what I saw today. And I'm going to say some things that my intention is not to be divisive, but there are some realities that we can see in black and white now that we have to acknowledge. We can't live in a fantasy land. We have to acknowledge some of the realities that are there in black and white in the form of some of the group voting tickets that have been made public. So let me just move across to the screen that I need here. And actually, I'm going to have to give me 1 sec. I need that one. And I'm going to have to roll it in with these. And then hopefully when I then come back here, excellent. Okay. So most of you would be familiar with Turning Point Australia. Joel Jammel, Turning Point Australia, they do absolutely fantastic work. Many of you would already have been looking at these graphs from Turning Point Australia. These are really, really handy as a starting point, but I do want to caution you, they are only a starting point, and we're going to see why in just a minute. Joel's done a great job, but he's trying to condense a lot of information down to a single graphic, and it's not possible to encapsulate all of the nuances. Now, I want to focus on, let me just have a look at which one I had selected. I believe it was not Northern Metro, Northern Region. Yes, I'm going to focus on Northern Region. Give me 1 sec. Let me get to the Western, Eastern, Northern. Okay. So there we go. You're having a look there at, this is the Turning Point Australia voting card. Now, this is kind of a cheat sheet. It's a really, really great starting point. But like I said, there's some nuances here that really get missed, and they matter. There's a couple of things that I want to draw your attention to right off the bat. We've discussed a few of them already, but they need to be kept in mind as we go ahead. Number one is your preferences do not get distributed until you get eliminated as a party, right? So the party in your district, so here we're looking at the grid for Northern Victoria, whichever party, and there's a lot more than the ones across the top. There's a bunch of them. We'll have a look actually at the exact figures later. Whichever one gets the lowest amount of votes, which is going to be one out there that's like a 0.1% of the vote or something like that, they'll get knocked out first. Their preferences get distributed to the second preference on their votes. Now, for people that have voted below the line, they control what that means. They are the one who writes number 1, number 2, number 3. They decide their first, second, third, fourth, fifth, etc. preference. For those that vote above the line, they just put a number 1 next to the party they prefer, and then it goes to the group voting ticket. The party dictates where it's going to go from there. So that's what we're talking about here. What we're looking at here are the group voting tickets for a number of different parties. And I'm going to zoom in so you can see it better. I realize it's probably too small on the screen. Now, Joel, Turning Point Australia have color-coded green for parties that they agree with the values of, red for the parties that they disagree with the values of, and they've marked the major parties. They've marked the Liberal Party specifically because that's a party of particular interest. They've marked the Liberal Party in yellow so that you can see where they are on everybody's ticket. But there's a couple of problems here. The temptation, let me zoom in a little bit. The temptation is just to read it from top to bottom. Northern Victoria, there we go. The temptation is just to go, I'll just zoom in a bit more. To have a look at, let's say, Pauline Hanson's One Nation Australia. You probably still can't see it all that well, but anyway, that's about as far as I can zoom in. I think it's not it's not zooming in anymore for me at this point. Northern Victoria, Pauline Hanson's One Nation. Obviously, their number 1 spot is Pauline Hanson's One Nation. Their vote, if you vote for them, their first vote goes to them. Surprise, surprise. Then they have, in second place, they have the Angry Victorians Party, United Australia Party, Family First Victoria, Freedom Party of Victoria, Liberal National Party, Companions and Pets Party, Liberal Democratic Party, Shooters, Fishers, Farmers Party, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on, right? Now, the assumption is it's very tempting to go, well, if One Nation doesn't get in, then my vote will go to the Angry Victorians Party. Probably not, because chances are the Angry Victorians Party will have already been eliminated, because chances are Angry Victorians being a relatively new party and One Nation being an established party with a name for itself, the Angry Victorians Party will get a lower primary vote and will get eliminated first. So what that means is by the time the One Nation preferences are being distributed, Angry Victorians is probably, and no disrespect to anyone in Angry Victorians, I'm just saying you're a new party, they're probably already gone. And so it skips straight over them and goes to UAP. But what if UAP have already been knocked out? Well, it skips over them and goes to Family First. What if Family First got a lower primary vote and have already been knocked out? Well, now it goes to the Freedom Party of Victoria. What if they're in the same boat? They've all been knocked out. Well, now it goes to the Liberal Party. But it goes to the Liberal Party having not touched any of the others because they got knocked out first. Right? So when you read these, resist the temptation to read them like it's a list of where your vote is going to go. Each line, you need to look at it and say, is this line going to get more votes or less votes than the party whose preferences are being distributed? Because if the answer is less votes, then chances are they'll be gone already. And so they don't actually matter anymore. And with that in mind, the whole list starts to take a bit of a different shape. Let's have a look at the Liberal Democratic Party. Now, this is now in Northern Victoria. They have number 1, the Liberal Democratic Party. Number 2, the Liberal National Party. Now, there ought to be a big asterisk there. And I've contacted Joel and said, listen, can we put an asterisk there? Because that actually isn't an accurate representation of what's happening for reasons that I will explain in full in just a couple of minutes' time. So just for the moment, take my word for it. You will understand this by the end of the slow chat. But for a moment, take my word for it. The Liberal National Party are not there. They're all the way down, almost at the bottom, just above the Labor Party. Okay, but for now, you're just going to have to take my word for it. So effectively, de facto, we have Liberal Democratic Party at the top, Angry Victorians Party second. Now, based on the results, and I'll bring them up here, the results of the 2022 federal Senate election here in Victoria. I've got the results here on Wikipedia. Let me just come back and double check. Yeah, all that's working. Okay, so based on the results here in Victoria, what we had was the Liberal National Coalition got the most number of votes at 1.7 million. Labor, 1.45 million. Greens, One Nation, UAP, Legalised Cannabis, Animal Justice, Liberal Democrats. That means that Liberal Democrats got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th highest number of votes in the federal Senate election, which happened only a few months ago. It happened in May. So when you turn around and you look at how many parties there are, is this the right one? This one. When you have a look at how many parties there are, eliminate all but 8 of them. And go through that exercise in your mind and ask yourself, is the Angry Victorians Party still there? The Sack Dan Andrews Party, the New Democrats, the Companions and Pets Party? Are they still there? Or have they actually been eliminated already? Because when you're assessing where those preferences are going to go, the primary question that you have to answer is, does that party still have enough votes to be in the running at this point? And if they don't, then they're irrelevant. So that's number 1. You have to actually think about which parties are going to be even there in the first place when the party that you voted for actually gets elected. Now, there's another nuance here that makes things really freaking complicated. And I wish it wasn't this way. I'm sorry, but it is. You'll notice One Nation has the Liberal National Party, that's the one in yellow, at number 6. The UAP has them at number 2. Liberal Democrats appear to have them at number 2, but there should be a dirty, great big asterisk there. And you can see on all of the other parties where they've put the Liberal National Party. Freedom Party of Victoria have put them at number 6, I think that is. Number 6. Liberals, of course, have put themselves first. But there needs to be a dirty, great big asterisk next to the Liberal Democrats, because actually they've put Liberals all the way down the bottom. They've done something that no one else has done. And this is experience. This is 2 decades in the Victorian electoral system showing in what they've done here. And we're going to dive right into the weeds. I hope you're up for it. I hope you're in the mood for a dive all the way into the weeds. Let me bring you along with me. Okay. So this is going to take a moment to explain, and I've had to blow it up pretty big, so I'm sorry. I can't fit the whole thing on my page all at once. So this is what the upper house ballot in Northern Victoria is going to look like. If you're voting in Northern Victoria, this is what the ballot looks like. And what we have here are each of the parties. So in column A, let me just make sure you can see that. Yep, in column A, you've got the Health Australia Party. Column B, Fiona Patton's Reason Party. C, Shooters, Fishers, Farmers. D, Companions and Pets. And on it goes. Across onto a second page, which for the purposes of digital, that's what it looks like. It'll be seamless. It'll just be this really big piece of paper for you physically, all the way to column K, the Angry Victorians Party. Then it goes down to a new column in L, down here, Darren Hinch's Justice Party, and goes all the way across, all the way up to V, which in this particular case happens to be Family First Victoria. Right, so you've got all of these different parties that are on the ballot. Actually, let me just tally that up quickly. Yeah, so it's 22. You've got 22 different parties on the ballot in Northern Victoria. Now that's above the line. See this big, thick black line? When we talk about above the line, below the line, that's the line we're talking about. If you vote above the line, and this example here is the Liberal Democrats example. So in column J, where I'm moving the mouse at the moment, you can see there's a little number 1 inside the Liberal Democrats. That's how you vote above the line. You just put a 1 into whichever party you want to vote for, and you do nothing else. Super simple, super easy, can't get it wrong. But what does it mean if you vote number 1 for, in this case, the Liberal Democrats? Well, actually, this is where the group voting tickets come in. And what it means is that you are de facto effectively filling out below the line in the way that the party have nominated. So here is below the line, and it's a lot more complicated. Below the line, we have the same columns, A, B, C, D, all the way through to V, down here on the second row on the right-hand side, okay? The same columns which represent the same parties, but now each individual candidate is listed on their own. We have each individual candidate listed by name. And notice how every single candidate has a number next to their individual name. What's happening here is not at a party level, it's at an individual level. So if you were to write, I'm going back up here above the line, if you were to fill in a number 1 in column J in Northern Victoria, which is a number 1 vote for the Liberal Democrats, then what will happen is the Liberal Democrats Northern Victoria District group voting ticket will take effect. What does that mean? Let's have a look below the line. What it means is here in column J, which is the Liberal Democratic Party, your first vote will go to Tim Quilty. Your second vote will go to Tim Molesworth. So all of the candidates for your selected party will get your vote before anybody else does. But if it exhausts and it moves on from that party, it goes through the various parties in the order of, and I'm going to bring this back up here. Let me double check. Yeah, that's still working. So here, the Liberal Democrats, this is for Northern Victoria. So we're looking at the same thing here. This is the Turning Point Australia summary. We have the Liberal National Party are second. Now, you'll remember I said there should be a dirty great big asterisk there. Here is why. Let's have a look at this. No other party did this. Have a look here. I'll see if I can highlight it. Yes, I can. Okay, so number 3. So again, we are looking at the group voting ticket for the Liberal Democrats in Northern Victoria. I'm sorry, this is arcane. It's specific, but this stuff matters. And once you understand the concept of what's working here, you'll understand what's happening right across the state, whatever electorate you're in. If you vote number 1 above the line for the Liberal Democrats, your vote goes number 1 for Tim Quilty. If he's already been elected, or if they're getting knocked out, it'll go number 2 to Tim Molesworth. If he's getting knocked out, it goes number 3 to Wendy Lovell. Now, what normally happens is once you start numbering a party, they number all of them. So normally it would be number 3 for Wendy Lovell, and number 4 would go to Gail Broad. I'm just trying to highlight that here. But it's not number 4, it's number 40. What happened? This is why I say, and I'll explain why in a minute, but I just want to highlight, this is why I say it looks like the Liberal National Party are in second spot in Northern Victoria for the Liberal Democrats, but they're actually not. Here is why. This is what's going on. Let me bring it up. There we go. It goes number 3 to Wendy Lovell. Now, Wendy Lovell is the first candidate for the Liberal Party in that district. You can guarantee she's going to get a quota as it is. She's already going to have a quota, which means that the preferences won't stop with her. She's already full. She's already been elected. By the time preferences are being distributed, the Liberal Party, you can guarantee it, will already have a quota. Wendy Lovell will already be elected. So the Liberal Democratic Party's preferences will flow through Wendy Lovell and keep going. They won't stop there. What would happen if this were the UAP, where they've numbered, number 3 for the Liberal Party candidate, and then number 4 for the next Liberal Party candidate, and number 5 for the next Liberal Party candidate, it would eventually reach a Liberal Party candidate that needs those votes, and those votes would stop. That's not what's going to happen here. It's arcane. I'm sorry. It's really detailed. I get it. It's annoying, but stay with me. Number 1, your vote goes to Tim Quilty. Number 2, it goes to Tim Molesworth. Number 3, it goes to Wendy Lovell. But then it leaves the Liberal Party, and there's a good reason for that. We'll touch on that in a minute. It leaves the Liberal Party here because Wendy Lovell's already been elected, so the preferences can't go to her. They keep looking for a home. They end up going across to number 4, Mark Jones, for the Angry Victorians Party. But here's the thing. Chances are, by the time we're distributing preferences from the Liberal Democrats, by the time the Liberal Democrats are being knocked out of the running, remember the results in the Victorian election. The Liberal Democrats were the 8th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th highest voted party. A new party like the Angry Victorians has probably already been knocked out. So it's not actually going to go to the Angry Victorians. They're gone already. So it's going to move through 4 and move through 5 and keep on looking for a home. Now, number 5, I'm looking for 6 and 7. 6 and 7 over here. Okay, and this is where people get really worried. They go, oh, Animal Justice Party. Oh, no. No, the Liberal Democratic Party preferences are going to the Animal Justice Party. I very much doubt that the Animal Justice Party are going to be still in the running in Northern Victoria. Remember, this is not a metropolitan seat. In a metropolitan seat, I'd be a bit more worried. But in Northern Victoria, I don't think the Animal Justice Party is going to still be in the running by the time the Liberal Democratic Party preferences are being distributed. So therefore, it passes through number 6, number 7. It goes looking for number 8. We have number 8 over here. Yasmin Ceylan, apologies, I don't know how to pronounce that properly. This is the Sack Dan Andrews Restore Democracy Party. I like the sound of that, Sack Dan Andrews, but they're going to be a micro party. They're going to be already eliminated as well, and the preferences are going to keep moving on. You get what's happening here. People are looking at the preferences line by line saying, oh no, my preferences are going to go to X party. No, they're not. Only if that party is actually still in the running. And because the Liberal Democrats have profile, they've had 2 elected MPs that have done an amazing job for us over the last couple of years. Most of these micro parties will be long gone. If the Liberal Democrats are a top 8 party once again, and there's 22 parties in the running, 14 parties are gone. And we know that the Liberal Party, the Labor Party, the Greens, UAP, One Nation, they're all going to be in there, right? There's only 1 or 2 random parties that are going to make it. And it's probably not going to be any of these guys. So therefore, the preferences keep on looking for a home. They move through 10, 11, 12, 13. The New Democrats, I doubt that they're going to get a lot of traction. Here we have 14, 15. We have the Companions and Pets Party, likely to be forever an absolute micro party, those guys. Then we have 16, 17. Now, this is where it could get interesting. It reaches the Legalized Cannabis Party. Now, these guys actually did remarkably well in the federal election. I haven't broken it down. I don't know how they did in that sort of Northern Victoria area. I haven't looked at it polling booth by polling booth. But here is finally, we reach the first chance where the preferences might actually stop. So if you vote for the Liberal Democrats in Northern Victoria in the upper house and the Liberal Democrats don't get elected, I doubt that your preferences are going to any one of the others down to number 16, Adam Miller, for the Legalized Cannabis Party. Now, if you stand by the values that we stand for at the Liberal Democratic Party, then you shouldn't have a problem with your vote going to legalize cannabis. That's not such a bad thing. But let's say it's not them. Let's say, worst case scenario, they've already been knocked out, okay? 16, 17 knocked out. Well, now it goes to the Shooters, Fishers, Farmers Party. Not a terrible outcome. Remember, we're moving our way down through, the best outcome is that the Liberal Democrats get elected. We're now moving our way down to, consolation prize territory. So 18, 19, maybe. Darren Hinch's Justice Party, there is no reason to believe that they're going to have any traction at all up in Northern Victoria. So I think they're going to be long gone by the time we get to where we're talking about here. 22, 23 Sustainable Australia Party, they're going to be long gone. Transport Matters Party, 24, 25. Again, they're going to be long gone. This is Northern Victoria we're talking about here. Now, you may be asking the question, well, hang on, Topher, it's all very well and good to say they're going to be long gone, but why are they being preferenced there in the first place? Why not just stick them down the bottom? Why not just put them all the way at the very, very end? Well, believe it or not, there's a very good reason for that. You see, as much as I'm looking at these parties and I'm saying they'll be long gone, okay? What that means is that when they go, they distribute their preferences. And what if the Liberal Democrats could negotiate a preference swap with these parties? So when these parties get knocked out, some of their preferences will find their way down the tree and eventually find their way to the Liberal Democratic Party. And now the Liberal Democratic Party goes up a little bit. The key here, the trick here, as a minor party, is that you're trying to do as many preference swaps as possible with parties that are much smaller than you, even if you don't agree with their values. This actually isn't about whether they align with you, because they're never going to be on the receiving end of your preferences, because they're going to get knocked out before you do. So what you do is you start collecting preferences off a bunch of these other parties that have no principles, and they're just desperate to do a deal with anybody. And you're not desperate to do a deal with anybody. You're doing your deals very, very strategically. You're looking at it saying, who are the small fish that we can gobble up and become a bigger and bigger and bigger fish, so that by the time there's only 8 people left, we're not at the bottom. We're 7th, we're 6th, we're 5th, we're 4th. And maybe we can get ourselves into one of those 5 available upper house seats available from each of the upper house districts. So that's why this happened. People looked at it and they freaked out. And they thought, hang on, the Liberal Democratic Party are preferencing Transport Matters above the Liberal Party? Yes, but Transport Matters won't be there by the time the Liberal Democratic Party's preferences are being distributed. And that nuance matters. This is what sophisticated politics looks like. And this is unfortunately what a lot of the new so-called freedom-friendly parties just don't get. If you want to make a difference, you've got to get elected. If you want to get elected, you'd better understand the system that you are trying to get elected in, and you better use it. Right? I'm not saying abandon your principles, not for a moment. None of this has compromised any of the Liberal Democratic Party's principles. What we've done is set up a sequence of other parties that we can gobble up one by one along the way to make sure that our vote accretes and grows off the backs of parties that don't necessarily agree with us. But that's okay, because they're never going to get our votes. We are never sending our votes to those parties because they're gone before we are. This is the game. All right? This is the game that so many of the other parties don't get. What that means is that, well, number one, we've maximized the opportunity for the Liberal Democratic Party to actually get somebody elected, whilst minimizing any danger of our preferences actually going somewhere that we don't want them to go. These are carefully calculated decisions. What that means, I'm going to go back to this example here. Transport Matters, they're going to be long gone by the time Liberal Democratic Party preferences are being distributed. We're now at 25. Where's 26? 26. All the way over here. Labor, DLP, the Democratic Labor Party, not the Labor Party. Okay, they have the same problems that the Liberal Democrats have, right? It sounds similar. They're not the same party. The Democratic Labor Party, think of them as they are what the Labor Party used to be in the 1960s, when they were actually quite a conservative, worker-focused party. That's what they are. Again, I really sincerely doubt in Northern Victoria that they're going to still be in the running by the time the Liberal Democratic Party are being kicked out. So 26, 27, that's them taken care of. We're looking for 28, 29. All the way over here, the Health Australia Party. Never heard of them. I don't think they're going to still be in the running. 30, 31. Where are we looking here? All the way over here. Okay. Family First Victoria, a party that I have a lot of sympathy with. I'm personally conservative, but I'm politically libertarian. Family First are a politically conservative party, so I agree with a lot of what they're trying to do. I just don't think the government is the right vehicle to do it. Look, they're a bit of a wild card, but having been reintroduced into Victorian politics, it's not impossible that they might get up. But again, Northern Victoria, I don't think so. Then you've got 32, 33, Freedom Party of Victoria, brand new party. It's very difficult to get traction as a brand new party. I don't think they're going to still be in the running by the time the Liberal Democrats are getting knocked out. Okay, now finally you have a genuine contender. 34, 35, there is a real chance that Ricky Lee Tyrrell, or that One Nation as a party, and therefore Ricky Lee Tyrrell as their lead upper house candidate, could still be in the running. Okay, now if they've been knocked out before the Liberal Democrats, perhaps because they weren't able to gobble up some of those smaller fish the way that the Liberal Democrats have set themselves up to do, then it might then pass to the United Australia Party. Jeff Shaw, another friend of mine. Again, not a bad result. Okay, if our vote gets stuck on these parties, that's not a terrible result. I don't agree with all their policies, not by a long shot, but it's an awful lot better than going to the Greens, and I'd say it's an awful lot better than going to the Liberal Party. So at this point, I'm still really happy at this point. Now we go to, what are we at? 37. We're looking for 38. And where we're going to find 38 is all the way over here at Fiona Patton's Reason Party, and people react. Listen, the Reason Party are not getting a lot of votes in Northern Victoria. There is no chance at this point, by the time the Liberal Democratic Party are being eliminated, and One Nation's been eliminated and UAP have been eliminated, because remember, we have those earlier in our sequence, and therefore the preferences are not going to flow to Fiona Patton's Reason Party unless Liberal Democratic Party and One Nation and UAP have all been eliminated. And I can tell you for a fact at that point, Fiona Patton's Reason Party is not still in the running. So it's going to go straight past them. And here, finally, we come back to the second placed Liberal Party candidate at number 40. Now, has anyone stuck with me? Am I talking to myself? Okay, there's 350 plus people still watching. Okay. So you haven't all just given up on me and gone, what the hell are you talking about? I'm not interested. Okay, good. So this is why I said that this difference where we have the first placed Liberal Party candidate at number 3 and the second placed Liberal Party candidate at number 40, not at number 4, is so important. Because 40 down to 43 is actually only just in front of the Labor Party. If I look for 44, I've lost my... here we go. Australian Labor Party. There you go. Jacqueline Symes. Okay. So what the Liberal Democrats have actually done is put the Liberal Party just in front of the Labor Party. Why? Because Wendy Lovell, for the purposes of Liberal Democratic Party preferences, Wendy Lovell's irrelevant. She will have already been elected. Guaranteed she will already have a quota. And therefore, the preferences will move on. What this allowed them to do, and I'm not privy to any behind-the-scenes conversations. I don't have any inside knowledge here. I'm just trying to interpret what I'm looking at and understand why they would have made these decisions. So why would they put the first candidate for the Liberal Party at number 3, where it doesn't matter, and then skipped all the way down to 40 for number 2? I'm guessing, and I'm guessing here, that they had some sort of a deal that they had to honor where they had to put the Liberal Party up high in return for something somewhere else, right? It's all swings and roundabouts. You put us up high over here, we'll put you up high over there, and it's all the wheeling and dealing. It's all the gobbling up of the small fish, right? My guess is that they, whether for optics or whether as part of a deal or for whatever reason, they wanted to be able to put the Liberal Party nice and high on their ticket in this particular seat, which we can see from the wonderful graphic that Turning Point Australia have created. Here, it looks like the Liberal National Party are in second place. If you vote for the Liberal Democrats, well, it's number 1 Liberal Democrats, number 2 Liberal National Party. That's not how this is going to play out. When you actually look at it, that's not how this is going to play out at all. It's actually going to go past the United Australia Party, Pauline Hanson's One Nation, and a bunch of others that are not going to be in contention before it actually ever helps the Liberal Party. In fact, if you go through how to vote cards line by line, which I have done, and checked every single Liberal Democratic Party upper house, not how to vote card, group voting ticket, they've done this on every single group voting ticket. They've done this on every group voting ticket where it appears that they've preferenced the Liberals. They haven't. The Liberals in practice are sitting all the way down just on top of Labor. They're literally just ahead of Labor. That's it. Now, what this means to me, number 1, is they've played some very sophisticated politics here. And again, I'm not privy to the conversations that go on behind the scenes, but they've played some very sophisticated politics here. They've managed to get a bunch of minor parties that are going to get eliminated before them anyway to agree to preference the Liberal Democratic Party, at which the Liberal Democratic Party will gobble up all of those small fish. No problem. We know that that's very likely to be the case. We don't know anything. It's politics. You can't be absolutely certain, but we know it's very likely to be the case because of the results that we saw in the federal election and because of how that vote breaks down across districts like Northern Victoria versus the rural environment. In Northern Victoria, animal justice and legalised cannabis are not going to be strong parties. So the Liberal Democrats are probably going to be all the way up here at number 6, behind or possibly in front of, who knows, One Nation and the United Australia Party, which means all of those other parties are gone before the Liberal Democratic Party distributes its preferences. And hopefully, if the Liberal Democratic Party actually gets someone elected, then they'll never be distributing their preferences. So that's the very long-winded deep dive into just how arcane this world is. And all we've looked at is one party in one of the upper house districts, right? We don't have time to go really diving into a deep dive. But here's the takeaway. There's a couple of takeaways that I really want to really emphasize here. Number 1, despite how it may appear in the Turning Point Australia cards, the Liberal National Party are below all of the freedom-friendly minor parties for the Liberal Democrats. In practice, that very first Liberal Party candidate that they are handing preferences to, they've already been elected. It's a guaranteed, it's a done deal. They've already been elected. The Liberal Democratic Party's preferences will flow straight through them and continue on to the United Australia Party, to One Nation, even to the Freedom Party of Victoria. And this is the point that I want to get to. The Freedom Parties have been saying that we need to preference each other before any of the majors. I've got some news for you. The Liberal Democratic Party are the only ones that actually did it. Sorry, that's not quite true. Family First and to a lesser degree the DLP have also done a very good job with this. But that's a different, yeah. So I'm talking about the major ones, the ones that are going to be right up there in the vote, the One Nations, the United Australia Parties, the Liberal Democrats. I'm personally not of the opinion that the Freedom Party of Victoria are going to do particularly well. I said as much to Aidan in my slow chat to him the other week. I said to him the same thing that I said to my dad when he ran at the federal election: you're going to be a rounding error. Now, that may not be the case in Aidan's seat, and it may not be the case in Morgan's seat, but I think statewide, where they're not actually running in person, they're going to be a rounding error. And so I don't actually think they're really in contention at all. That's just my personal opinion, and we'll all find out in 2 Saturdays' time, and I might have egg on my face. Who knows? But that's, as I try and read the tea leaves, I've always said to you, I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what I think. Now, it doesn't mean I'm always right. I've been wrong plenty of times, but I'm going to tell you what I think, and I'm going to tell you honestly, and that's what I think. But of One Nation, UAP, Liberal Democrats, and the Freedom Party of Victoria, the only party that actually put all of the others ahead of any of the majors was the Liberal Democratic Party. If we come across and have a look at the Freedom Party of Victoria, you'll see the Liberal National Party in yellow are just here. Above that is UAP and Pauline Hanson's One Nation. Great. Also Family First and Angry Victorians. Great. Got no problem with any of that. Liberal Democrats are down here. And unlike with the Liberal Democrats here, where this yellow bar actually isn't representative of where the Liberal Party really are, in the case of all of the other parties, they didn't use that tactic. And this yellow bar is actually representative of where the Liberal Party are in their group voting ticket. So their votes are almost certainly going to stop here, and they will never reach the Liberal Democratic Party. They haven't preferenced all of the freedom-friendly parties. And in fact, if you think about it, the Liberal Party, during lockdowns, they wanted jail terms for people that broke lockdown laws. The Liberal Party voted to expel elected MPs, including one of their own members, Neil Angus, from the Victorian Parliament because they refused to show their medical status. The Liberal Party were horrific. And yet the Freedom Party of Victoria have come out and said, we're going to put them above the Liberal Democrats, whose members were the ones being voted out of Parliament. Let's not forget, it was also the Freedom Party of Victoria that did a lot to popularise this idea that the Liberal Democrats were going to be preferencing Labor above Liberals. That was always a lie, and we know it's a lie because we can now see with all of the group voting tickets and all of the how to vote cards that nowhere has Labor been put above the Liberals by the Liberal Democratic Party. Now, I normally try and play nice. I normally try and say, hey, everybody, let's all just get along. But I kind of feel like there are some people trying to be a wrecking ball. And there might even be some people who describe themselves as wrecking balls, and maybe that's an accurate description. And I think it's very disappointing to see this happening. And that the people being a wrecking ball are the ones pointing fingers at others, saying, oh, you're not playing nice, you're not joining in, you're not working with us. Well, it's quite clear who's not working with who. One Nation actually did really well, except with the Liberal Democratic Party. They've, the Family First, United Australia Party, Freedom Party of Victoria, Angry Victorians themselves, of course, all above the Liberal National Party. Liberal Democratic Party, excluded. Now, I can't help but wonder if there is a certain degree of sort of professional jealousy that went into some of those decisions. Historically, it's always been true when these minor parties are all competing for preferences and everything else. If you are the party that got lucky and got elected last time around, you get punished for that by all the parties next time around. Professional jealousy, you got it last time, we don't want you to get it again, so we're going to move you, shuffle you lower down the order. And I have to wonder if something like that happened here. What it means, though, is that if One Nation are eliminated and UAP are eliminated, it's not going to come to the Liberal Democrats. Even if Tim Quilty does really well, it's still not going to come to him. It's going to get blocked by the Liberal Party. UAP are even worse. They've gone number 2 to the Liberal National Party, and it's a genuine number 2. They haven't just numbered the top one that's already gone in anyway, and the preferences will flow through. No, they've numbered all of the Liberal Party candidates in sequence in their number 2 position. And that means that their preferences will go no further. The UAP are harvesting preferences for the Liberal Party. These are all parties that said we're going to put each other above any of the majors. They weren't necessarily on board the majors last thing, but they were all saying we're going to support each other, we're all going to play nice, we're all going to preference each other above the majors. The only party that actually kept their word was the Liberal Democratic Party. And the reason I had to go through that long arcane explanation of how the preferences would flow is because on a graphic like this from Turning Point Australia, it doesn't look that way, right? But once you understand what's going on behind the scenes with that first candidate being numbered, but it doesn't matter, and then that next candidate being numbered all the way down just above the Labor Party, and that's what you'll find every single time across all the seats. In practice, the Liberal Democrats have put the Liberal Party just above Labor, right down near the bottom of their tickets. All of the other parties that you're looking at and you're worried about, Animal Justice Party, Transport Matters, blah, 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 are irrelevant. They won't be there by the time the Liberal Democratic Party's preferences are being distributed, right? What has been done here is incredibly clever, incredibly sophisticated, and speaks to decades of experience in politics. And the people that are hating on it, the people that are calling it out, saying they've betrayed their values, etc., these people are actually betraying their ignorance and the fact that they don't actually understand the very system that they claim to want to change. Okay? I'm sorry to have to, I don't like this. I don't like this. I want to be the guy that plays nice. I want to be the guy that says, hey, we can all get along. We can all, play nice together. We can all just preference each other. And that's true. We could have done that. But sadly, the Liberal Democrats, as much as the Liberal Democrats have been the ones copying the flack, being called a party that lacks principles, they're actually the only ones that delivered on their promise. That really fucking pisses me off. You have no idea how much it has cost me personally to be supporting all of the freedom-friendly minor parties over the last 2 years at my own attempted election in Tasmania, online, how much flack I have copped standing up for these other parties. And I've got to say, I feel personally stabbed in the back. I actually feel personally stabbed in the back by some of these parties that have sung kumbaya with me and then turned around and done this on their group voting tickets. It is incredibly, incredibly disappointing. The end result is, as David Limbrick said to us earlier in the slow chat, it's actually now more likely than it was that we are going to have a Greens-dominated crossbench and possibly even Greens holding the balance of power. Because by UAP going straight to the Liberals, by One Nation not going via the Liberal Democrats, by Freedom Party of Victoria, who I'm pretty sure are going to be pretty much irrelevant, certainly outside of Aidan's seat, but we'll see. By them not going to the Liberal Democratic Party, we've created a situation where basically it's Liberal Party or bust. They're all harvesting preferences for the Liberal Party. And if that doesn't work, it's the Greens that will pick up the crumbs because they know how to play the preference game with all the other socialist micro parties, right? They're playing that game on that end. They understand the system. Liberal Democrats understand the system. And we wanted other people to join us in making this work. And they all went and did their own thing and became essentially preference harvesting operations for the Liberal Party. I'm pissed. I am. I'm pissed. So that's where we're at. That is my analysis of the group voting tickets. That's what's happened. When you actually understand politics, when you actually understand the Victorian system, the group voting tickets, how it works, how preferences flow, under what circumstances, in what order and when, what the Liberal Democratic Party did was incredibly intelligent. Now, I'm sorry that it takes a 1 hour and 15 minute slow chat to explain it. It shouldn't, but it does, right? Because it is very arcane. But what they've done is very, very clever. And we could, had the UAP, One Nation, even the Freedom Party of Victoria actually just gotten on board and said, hey, we need smart politics. I agree that the system is broken. I agree that group voting tickets shouldn't exist. I'm in agreement with that message, but we can't change it if we can't get elected. So let's use it to get elected. If we'd done that, we'd be in a really, really strong position right now. As it is, if you want to vote for all of the freedom-friendly minor parties, which I've always advocated for, I've always said, you pick whatever order, just make sure you vote for all of them, right? You've all heard me say that. If you want to do that in this election, voting above the line, your only option is to vote for the Liberal Democratic Party, because they're the only party that has actually put all of them in order before the major parties. All of the others have put the Liberal Party in as a blocker, excluding some, and I would argue excluding the best of the freedom parties from their preferences. So what do I think about all of this? Well, I think number one, we should all be voting below the line. Now, I'm actually really happy with the Liberal Democratic Party's group voting tickets now that I've gone for a dive. It took a while. I didn't like them when I first looked at them. I was pretty pissed, but I dove into them. I got into the weeds, as you just saw, and I'm actually pretty happy now, right? But I think that we should all, as a matter of policy and principle, we should all be voting below the line. And that means you can still vote for all of the freedom-friendly minor parties. And that's what I'll be doing. I'll be voting below the line. I'm going to number every single Liberal Democratic Party candidate that is available to me. Then, at my preference, depending on who the individuals are, I'm going to go through UAP, One Nation, and I'm going to have a look at what other parties there are that might be aligned with my principles. And I'm going to vote for every single one of them. And then last, before I stop, because remember, you can stop. Once you've got 5, you don't have to number every single one. You can stop after 5. Once I've got once I've gone far enough, at the very bottom, I'm going to number all of the Liberal Party candidates as a blocker to make sure that if all else fails, my vote goes to them and I don't end up helping the Labor Party or the Greens or the Socialists or any of those other nonsense parties. Right? That's how I'm going to be doing it. Now, Turning Point Australia's made a comment here, which I mentioned before. Joel Jammel made that graphic. He had to make a judgment call about, the graphic being technically correct or kind of effectively correct. He had to make a judgment call. I've had a chat with him. Hopefully, we're going to update that a little bit with an asterisk. Sorry, let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm talking about these here. I'd love for there to be a little asterisk on the Liberal Democratic Party's one where it shows the Liberal Nationals, because actually, technically, that's correct. Effectively, it's not. But anyway, we're going to have that discussion. But Turning Point Australia make a great point here. All Turning Point Australia how to vote cards are below the line, so the voter has the power. All right. So I would still recommend, even though I disagree ever so slightly with these graphics here, I would still recommend checking out Turning Point Australia. They've got some wonderful tools that you can help the parties that you want to support. And also below the line voting, you can design your own how to vote cards over there. So I really, really, really strongly recommend you check them out. And of course, the Liberal Democratic Party have how to vote cards as well. If you're that way inclined, I am. You don't have to be. But just make sure that you actually understand. If you're going to vote above the line, which I don't recommend, I recommend below the line, make sure you understand what that party has done with your vote, not theirs, but they're treating it like it's theirs. And some of them have let ego or opportunism or other things get in the way of actually playing the team game. And I regret to say that only the Liberal Democratic Party actually played the team game when you dive in and really take a look at what's going on. And that hurts me to say, but it's the truth. All right. Now, there's been a huge number of comments and questions and stuff that have come through, and I apologize. I've been sort of focused on what I've been trying to convey. So I'm going to go through just a few of the most recent comments. Turning Point Australia is 100% right. Division means death. And I want to highlight something here. A lot of shade has been thrown at the Liberal Democratic Party by specific individuals and specific parties, and they still put them above the majors. The Liberal Democratic Party still put the parties that were lying about them above the majors, right? That's what it means to be a team player. That's what it looks like to be a team player. The party's throwing shade, the party's spreading lies. They don't know what it means to be a team player. Just saying. Effective is what matters. Just list it where it will take effect. Paul, I understand where you're coming from. However, from Joel's point of view, if he has something that is obviously technically incorrect, there's going to be a lot of people, straight away there's going to be, Turning Point Australia is spreading lies and rumors by people that haven't actually dug in and understand it. So I really do genuinely understand Joel's position, where he's gone for what's technically correct. I completely get where he's coming from, but I'm hoping that we could find a way to kind of I'm hoping that we could find a way to kind of make both work, where he can be technically correct, but also highlight the fact that the effect is going to be different. So Jess asks, Topher, if you were in Northern Victoria, would you put Wendy Lovell third in line with what the Lib Dems have put? Wendy Lovell's going to get elected anyway, which is a good thing in my view. I like her, and she's done some great work on water and other issues. So I wouldn't be too concerned about the election of Wendy Lovell. What I would personally be doing is voting below the line. I would vote Liberal Democrats, and then I would go, for me personally, in Northern Victoria, because Ricky Lee Tyrrell is a candidate up there, I would go One Nation second. All right, so 1 and 2 Liberal Democratic Party, 3 and 4, and however many for One Nation. Then I'd go UAP. Then I'd find any other parties that I was happy with. Then I would number every single Liberal Party candidate, including obviously Wendy Lovell there. So if my vote didn't stick anywhere else, it would end up with Wendy, or actually it wouldn't end up with Wendy because she's going to get elected already before my preferences would get distributed. It would end up with whoever's second or maybe third on her ticket. That's what would happen in practice. So you'd still be voting for Wendy Lovell, but just understand Wendy's going to get elected just on first preference votes for the Liberal Party in Northern Victoria anyway. It's just going to happen. So yeah, I wouldn't be too worried about that. Yeehaw, that is a deep dive. Yes. Look, Paul, I hate, Paul says, are you going to update to show who has done the wrong thing? Are you going to go out and tell people who lied? Oh gosh, there is already enough bitterness and hate and division in the world without me feeding it. I do try, and sometimes I don't succeed, I will be the first to admit, but I do try and kind of stay above a lot of that. I've kind of gotten as close as I really want to that tonight. I really don't want to go any further. So yeah, not really. Great idea, putting blocker votes below the line. Yeah, 100%. Look, I don't like the Liberal Party, but I would much rather see the Labor Party get punished after everything they've done. So I will be putting the Liberal Party in as my last option, voting below the line. I will put them in at the end, so that if none of the other ones stick, it ends up with them and not with not with them, but not de facto helping the Labor Party or the Greens, because my vote runs out and exhausts. Yeah, so the only party that put the Freedom parties before the majors in the upper house are Family First and the Lib Dems. Okay, so Family First did it as well. Thank you. I appreciate you picking that up for me. So Family First, my apologies. I wasn't including them in the major. I don't think they're going to do particularly well. They've just arrived back on the scene. A lot of people don't know they exist yet. So I was just talking about those 4 parties. But yes, Family First have also done that. And the Lib Dems, for clarity, have only done it in the way that I've explained. At a technical level, they've put the Liberals above the others. In reality, they haven't. Doesn't the LDP use the Victorian election whisperer? Yes. And that's why they were able to do preference swaps with a whole bunch of smaller parties that are going to get eliminated before them, where they'll get to gobble up all the preferences from those parties. That's the purpose of that from the LDP's point of view. I'm not going to confirm or deny. Yes, Liberal Democrats Victoria stuck to their word and principles. Yes, they did. Yeah, look, they're not going to do very well in this election, I don't think. And what happens to these brand new micro parties when they don't do well at their very first election is they very quickly dissolve, and it's usually ugly. People get really personal, and it gets ugly. What can we all do to just get Labor out? Well, what we're doing now, educating people, helping each other to understand what's going on. I recommend in the lower house, you have to number every single box in the lower house. I recommend, me personally, because I'm a member of the Liberal Democratic Party, full disclosure, Liberal Democratic Party first if they have a candidate in your lower house seat, and then people like UAP, One Nation, Freedom Party of Victoria, etc. Right? Just go through all of those. Then use the Liberal Party as a blocker, because once you add the Liberal Party, your vote probably won't go any further. And then below the Liberal Party, you would put Labor Party, Greens, Socialist Alliance, any of these sort of mob that you really don't want to get elected at all. So it's like top half are the parties that you like in order of the one you like most, sort of working your way down. Liberal Party is a blocker between the ones you like and the ones you just don't. That's how I would be going. Lower house, upper house, same principle, but you don't have to number every box. So once you get to your blocker, which is the Liberal Party, you don't have to continue any further. You add the Liberal Party after the parties that you like, and then you just stop. We're making both work now that I've had 3 hours of sleep in. Joel has been burning the candle at both ends. So Joel is onto it. and he's making some adjustments. So thank you, Joel. I'm a big fan of your work, as you know, and the fact that you're willing to do this is only even better. Thank you so much. Okay. Tim Quilty number 1. So Family First, is Family First popular? Asked Jessica. They have had an elected senator in the past. So that's at a federal level. A Victorian senator was elected under the Family First brand, but that's going back 20 years. I don't know exactly, but it's going back a while. Then they kind of disappeared and they've just been relaunched. I think they have the potential to become popular, but they're in a fairly competitive field now. The likes of One Nation, UAP, Liberal Democratic Party are all kind of competing for a similar sort of, even the DLP are competing for a similar space. So watch this space. They're certainly not popular at the moment. They've just re-emerged. We will find out how popular they are at this election. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not going to do it again on the Western region, but if you spend some time, study it carefully, make sure you go to, and I'll give you the URL here. Make sure you go to the group voting tickets. I'm just going to drop this copy. So this URL that I'm just posting, it should pop up in all of your chat boxes, whatever platform you're watching on. That link there will get you to the page where all of the group voting tickets are available for you to download and to look at in PDF form. And that's what looks like the thing that I was showing you before. Okay, well, I'm going to just scroll this. Thank you for all the comments. I mean, the comments are just amazing. You guys are obviously really, really... Trevor, is that right? Has Catherine Cummings joined? We were just talking about Family First. Is that what's happened? Can you send a clarification just to confirm that? I know she was having difficulty. She was trying to get the Independence Party registered, and boy, they were putting her through the ringer. So can you just jump back in, Trevor, when you get a chance and just confirm? Are you talking about Catherine Cummings joining Family First? Ben Thompson says yes. Yes, she has, says Ben Thompson. Okay, yes, it's true. There you go. Okay, well, you learn something new every day. I've had my head buried elsewhere. I didn't know that. Well, I wish her well. She's certainly been one of the good ones through all of this. So I hope she does really well. Oh no, okay. So other people are saying Catherine is with Angry Victorians. Okay, all right. Sorry, not Family First, Angry Victorians. I still wish her well. I hadn't heard either way. I still wish her well. Yep. So thank you all. AVP, got it. All right. So Western Metro District with Angry Victorians Party. Okay. Right. Okay. All right. Well, thanks, says, oops, it's all moving too fast. Susan Miller, thanks, Topher. Stuart says, thanks. Yep, we got that. I got that wrong. Thank you for the clarification. Yeah, and Trevor, I misread that. I just saw one part of it. I can't see, just so you know, when I'm seeing comments coming through, I can't see how it's nested. Every comment comes through as a discrete comment. So if you're actually replying to somebody else, I actually don't get that context, unfortunately. So I can make mistakes like that. So I apologize. Faye, that was just what was needed. Thanks, everyone, especially Topher. My pleasure. I hope that shed some light on it. I'm sorry to have dived in so deep into such an arcane, boring, mind-numbing issue. But once you understand it, you understand just what a brilliant job the Victorian Liberal Democratic Party have done. Will they win as a result? Unfortunately, without the backing of the UAP, Liberal Democrat, the One Nation Party, and to a lesser degree some of these other parties, it's tricky. It's tricky. I hope they do, obviously, but it's not guaranteed by any stretch of the imagination. And if they do, ironically, it'll be thanks to the preference whispering deal that they were so roundly maligned for. So, look, politics is easy for everyone to commentate on, but it's a hard game to play. And there's no substitute for 2 decades of real world experience dealing with it. And I think that's what we're seeing weighing in here is real world experience. Will it translate to success at the ballot box? That's kind of up to us to get out there, hand out how to vote cards, do all the work, do the boring, as I say, stand on polling booths, do all that sort of stuff. So fingers crossed that we will still have a MP by the name of David Limbrick and Tim Quilty, and hopefully many others under the Liberal Democratic Party banner. But we have a week and a bit to find out. Guys, if you're not on my email list, would you please go to topherfield.net? I'll type it in here and just make sure that you're on my email list. I'm getting restricted on my social media. Once again, it happens regularly. So if you could go to topherfield.net and jump onto my email list, that way I can contact you even if I get deplatformed at some point in time. Also, at the very start, I played you an intro that showed some brew coffee. That is how I am trying to pay the bills at the moment. So if you like coffee, go to brewaustralia.com. I'm just dropping in the comments into the comments there. Brewaustralia.com. Order yourself some wonderful filter coffee. It is filter coffee. It's not espresso coffee. Slightly different thing. Order some. We're going to have some sample packs available very, very soon. Jump on the website, check it out, get a sample pack, see if you like it. If you do like it, subscribe. That would help me very, very much in order to keep doing what I do. And these sorts of explanations and this sort of education. So Lizzie says, I attest brew coffee is fantastic. Daniel and Moore says the brew is amazing. Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. So brewaustralia.com. Michael Angelico, it's excellent coffee. So guys, thank you very much for joining me. I feel exhausted after giving an hour and a half explanation. I'm sure you feel mind boggled having watched it. But if you can help spread the word, or at the very least help spread this video so that some of these lies that are being told can be put to bed, and we can actually really understand which parties have actually stood by their principles and which ones shout principles over and over again, but have actually shown that they really don't have any. And that is the state of play in Victoria today. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next time.